Every great change begins with a conversation, sometimes with others, but more often with ourselves. The way we speak to ourselves determines the way we see the world, the choices we make, and ultimately the life we create. For the next 21 days, I invite you to take on a challenge. A challenge not about running marathons or achieving impossible goals, but about mastering the dialogue inside your own head. Because if you can change the way you talk to yourself, you can change the course of your life. We often underestimate the power of words. The sentences we repeat internally become the beliefs we carry, and those beliefs shape our behavior. Think about it. If every morning you wake up and tell yourself, I am not good enough, then your actions will follow that script. You'll hesitate, you'll hold back, and you'll play small. But if you tell yourself, I am capable, I am growing, I am becoming better each day, suddenly the choices you make begin to align with that belief. This 21-day challenge is simple, but it is not easy. For the next 3 weeks, you will consciously choose the language you use toward yourself. You will replace self-doubt with encouragement. You will replace criticism with compassion. And you will replace fear with courage each day. When your mind starts feeding you the old script, the one that tells you you're not enough, you will stop, pause, and rewrite the story. Remember, the brain doesn't distinguish between what is true and what is repeated. Repetition carves pathways in the mind, and those pathways become habits of thought. If you consistently feed yourself empowering language for 21 days, your brain begins to wire itself to believe it. That belief translates into confidence, clarity, and the courage to take action you once avoided. 3 weeks may sound short, but in those 3 weeks, you will train your mind to work for you, not against you. At the end of the challenge, you won't just have developed a habit, you will have unlocked a new way of living. A way where your inner voice is your greatest ally, not your harshest critic. And that more than anything else is what transforms lives. So I invite you to begin today, not tomorrow, not when things feel right today. Talk to yourself like the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. For 21 days, give yourself the gift of positive, intentional self-talk. And watch how, step by step, word by word, your life begins to transform. 5 keynotes of the speech. The language you use with yourself defines your beliefs and behaviors. Replacing negative self-talk with positive affirmations creates new mental patterns. Repetition is the key. 21 days of intentional self-talk rewires the brain. Self-compassion is more powerful for growth than self-criticism. Transformation begins the moment you choose to rewrite your inner dialogue. The language you use with yourself defines your beliefs and behaviors. And this truth is one of the most overlooked but most powerful forces in shaping who we are and who we become. Every single day, thousands of thoughts run through our minds, and many of them are directed inward. The tone, the words, and the stories we tell ourselves either push us forward or hold us back. Most people think words are just sounds strung together, but words are not neutral, they are seeds. And when planted repeatedly in the mind, they grow into beliefs that shape the way we act, the way we relate to others, and the way we see the world. If the language you use toward yourself is filled with criticism, doubt, or negativity, you begin to believe that narrative, and your actions will follow. On the other hand, when your inner dialogue is supportive, encouraging, and empowering, you create a foundation for growth, resilience, and confidence. Think about a child who is constantly told that they are not smart enough, not strong enough, not capable enough. Even if it is not true, that child begins to accept the words as their reality. They hesitate to try new things, they shrink in opportunities, and they develop fear of failure, not because they lack ability, because the language spoken to them created a belief that they were destined to fail. Now imagine the opposite, a child who hears, you are capable, you are resourceful, you can learn. That child develops courage, curiosity, and the willingness to try. Nothing about their natural ability has changed, but the language shaped their self-perception, and that self-perception shaped their behavior. The same principle applies not only to children, but to every single one of us. The words you speak to yourself create the framework for how you navigate life. When you repeatedly tell yourself that you cannot do something, you close the door on possibility before you even try. The brain interprets it as a command, and it doesn't waste energy pursuing what it has been told is impossible. This is why so many people live below their potential, not because they lack the talent or opportunities, but because their self-talk has trained their brain to believe they are incapable. The reverse is also true. When you affirm that you are capable, even when you don't feel it in the moment, you are instructing your mind to look for solutions, to find possibilities, and to take action that aligns with those words. The shift in language creates a shift in focus, and the shift in focus creates a shift in behavior. Beliefs are not formed overnight. They are constructed through repetition, through the quiet, constant whispers of the words we use with ourselves. Tell yourself often enough that you are not good at something, and your brain wires that belief as truth. It becomes the lens through which you interpret experiences. If you fail, you see it as confirmation of what you've always told yourself. If you succeed, you downplay it as luck or chance because it doesn't fit the script you've been repeating. In this way, language becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the beauty of this reality is that it also works the other way. By intentionally choosing empowering language, you can create new beliefs. You can train your mind to see challenges as opportunities, setbacks as lessons, and success as something you are worthy of. The behaviors that follow are a natural consequence of those beliefs. If your inner language tells you that you are strong and adaptable, you will act with courage when faced with difficulties. If your self-talk tells you that you are disciplined and committed, you will approach your goals with consistency. The actions may feel small at first, but over time, they build momentum, and that momentum leads to transformation. In other words, your behaviors are simply an outward reflection of the internal dialogue you've been having all along. This is why changing the language you use with yourself is not just about feeling good, it is about creating a new reality. Every word you speak inwardly is like a vote for the person you are becoming. If the majority of your votes are cast toward negativity, self-doubt, and fear, you will become the person who embodies those traits. But if your votes are cast toward courage, possibility, and growth, you begin to embody those qualities as well. The shift is gradual, but it is powerful, and it all starts with the words you choose. In the end, the language you use with yourself is not just background noise in your mind. It is the blueprint for your beliefs, and those beliefs are the foundation for your actions. If you want to change your behaviors, start by listening to the way you talk to yourself. Notice the words, notice the tone, and ask yourself whether they are leading you toward the life you want or keeping you stuck in the life you fear. Because the truth is simple, the language you use with yourself is shaping you whether you are aware of it or not. And the moment you choose to change that language, you begin to change everything else. Replacing negative self-talk with positive affirmations creates new mental patterns, and this shift is not simply about being optimistic or ignoring reality. It is about training the brain to operate from a place of strength rather than fear. Many people underestimate the impact of the words they whisper to themselves when no one else is listening. They assume those words are harmless because they are private, but in truth, those inner sentences are constantly wiring the brain. When you repeat a negative phrase often enough, "I'm not good enough," "I'll never succeed," "I always fail," you are programming your mind to treat those statements as facts. The brain is designed to conserve energy, so it starts filtering experiences to match what you already believe. You fail a test, and instead of seeing it as one moment to learn from, your mind says, "See, I told you I'm a failure." That loop continues until your life is shaped more by your self-talk than by your actual potential. Positive affirmations interrupt this destructive cycle. They are not about lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect, but about offering your brain a new script to follow. If you wake up each day and tell yourself, "I am capable of learning, I am worthy of growth, I can handle challenges," your brain begins to look for evidence to support those statements. Suddenly, failure becomes a lesson, effort becomes proof of growth, and success becomes a confirmation that you are moving forward. Affirmations reframe the way experiences are interpreted, and with enough repetition, they create new mental patterns that encourage resilience instead of despair. Consider the way the brain responds to repetition. Neuroscience shows that neural pathways are strengthened by the thoughts we engage with most often. A repeated negative thought is like walking the same path in the forest over and over again. Eventually, it becomes the easiest road to follow. Positive affirmations work by carving new paths. At first, the path feels unfamiliar and even uncomfortable. Telling yourself, "I am capable," might feel untrue if you have spent years believing the opposite. But with consistent practice, the path becomes clearer, easier, and more natural. The brain begins to default to this new route instead of the old one. That is how mental patterns are reshaped. By consistently redirecting thoughts away from negativity and toward affirmations that align with the person you want to become. It is important to understand that replacing negative self-talk does not mean ignoring challenges. Positive affirmations are not about pretending difficulties don't exist. They are about equipping yourself with the mindset to face them. For instance, if you tell yourself, "I never succeed," then when a challenge arises, you approach it with hesitation or avoidance, and your behavior confirms your belief. But if your affirmation is, "I can learn from every experience," you approach the same challenge with curiosity, persistence, and the willingness to adapt. The challenge itself does not change, but your inner narrative does, and that narrative shapes how you behave. Over time, the difference in outcomes becomes dramatic, all because the internal script was replaced. Another important factor is the emotional tone of affirmations. Negativity often carries a harsh, critical tone, which reinforces feelings of shame and inadequacy. Positive affirmations, however, create a sense of encouragement and support. When you speak kindly to yourself, you activate the same motivational systems that external encouragement would trigger. Just as we thrive when others believe in us, we thrive when we believe in ourselves. The words "I can," "I will," and "I am" become internal motivators that push you to take action, even when doubt tries to creep in. Replacing negative self-talk with positive affirmations also impacts confidence in ways that ripple into every area of life. People who engage in constructive self-talk are more willing to take risks, more open to opportunities, and more persistent in pursuing goals. Confidence does not appear out of nowhere. It is built through consistent internal reinforcement. Every time you tell yourself, "I can do this," and then act on it, you collect evidence that strengthens the belief. Eventually, confidence becomes a natural byproduct of the new mental patterns created through affirmation. This practice even influences physical performance. Athletes, for example, use affirmations to enhance focus and endurance. Telling themselves, "I am strong," or "I can keep going," does not magically remove fatigue, but it shifts their mental state so that their body continues to respond. The same principle applies to daily life. When you tell yourself you can handle stress, your body relaxes into resilience rather than collapsing under pressure. The mind leads and the body follows. What makes this transformation so profound is that it begins with such a small, invisible act. The choice to replace one thought with another, no one else may hear it, but over time, the difference becomes visible in behavior, confidence, and results. Negative self-talk is like a poison drip that quietly erodes potential, while positive affirmations are like steady drops of water nurturing growth. Both accumulate over time, and whichever you choose will define the patterns of your mind. So when you decide to replace negative self-talk with positive affirmations, you are not simply trying to feel better in the moment, you are reshaping your brain, rewiring your patterns, and setting the foundation for behaviors that align with strength, resilience, and growth. The mind becomes what it is most often told, and when you choose affirmations that reflect who you are capable of becoming, you create a self that lives up to those words. Repetition is the key. 21 days of intentional self-talk rewires the brain, and this is not a vague motivational claim, but a principle supported by science and human behavior. The human brain is designed to adapt, learn, and reshape itself based on consistent input. This process, known as neuroplasticity, means that the thoughts and words you feed your mind repeatedly are not just passing ideas, they are instructions that the brain follows. Every time you repeat a phrase to yourself, you are strengthening a particular neural pathway, just like walking the same trail over and over again makes it more defined. Over time, this repeated self-talk becomes the default setting of your mind. That is why patterns of negative thinking feel automatic, because they have been reinforced through constant repetition. The power lies in understanding that you can create new, empowering defaults simply by repeating intentional positive self-talk consistently for 21 days. The idea of 21 days is not arbitrary. Studies in psychology and habit formation show that 3 weeks is often enough time to begin forming new mental habits. While some habits take longer to fully ingrain, 21 days is a crucial starting point because it builds momentum. For those 3 weeks, each time you replace a negative thought with a positive affirmation, you are laying down new mental connections. The more you repeat, the stronger those connections become. By the end of the 21 days, your brain begins to favor the new thought pattern because it has been rehearsed so often. What once felt forced and unnatural starts to feel familiar and automatic. This is how repetition becomes the foundation of transformation. It is similar to learning a new skill. At first, practicing feels awkward and uncomfortable. A musician learning a new piece stumbles through the notes, a child learning to write struggles with shaky letters, and someone learning a language feels clumsy in speech. But with daily repetition, the skill becomes easier, smoother, and eventually second nature. The same principle applies to self-talk. If you are used to saying, I can't, or I'm not good enough, then replacing those with I can and I am capable may feel awkward at first. You might even feel like you are lying to yourself. But with repetition, the awkwardness fades and the new phrases begin to feel natural. They become the language your brain expects and embraces. The consistency of repetition is what creates the breakthrough. Saying something positive once does little to change the mind, just as going to the gym once does little to change the body. But showing up daily, even when you don't feel like it, builds strength. The repetition of self-talk trains your brain the way physical exercise trains your muscles. Each affirmation repeated over 21 days is like a rep in the gym for your mind. The more consistent you are, the stronger your mental resilience becomes. Over time, your brain starts to automatically replace negativity with constructive thoughts because that is the pattern you've rehearsed. It is important to note that repetition does not mean blind chanting without belief. Instead, it is a practice of intentional focus. When you repeat affirmations, you are not just saying words, you are directing your attention and energy toward the mindset you want to cultivate. The brain thrives on focus, and what you focus on expands. By repeating empowering self-talk daily, you teach your mind to focus on growth, possibility, and strength instead of fear, limitation, and doubt. The more you rehearse this focus, the more it becomes ingrained. Another powerful aspect of repetition over 21 days is the way it begins to influence emotional responses. At first, when faced with challenges, your instinct may be to react with self-doubt or anxiety. But as you consistently practice affirmations like, I can handle this, or I learn and grow through challenges, your emotional response gradually shifts. Instead of fear, you begin to feel curiosity or determination. Instead of avoidance, you feel willingness to act. Repetition reprograms not just the thoughts, but also the emotional reactions tied to them, giving you greater control over how you respond to life. The 21-day challenge also creates accountability and structure. By committing to 3 weeks, you are giving yourself a specific time frame that is long enough to make an impact, but short enough to feel achievable. This structure helps keep the practice consistent. Each day of repetition becomes a building block, and missing a day feels like breaking the chain. The sense of progress motivates you to keep going, and as the days add up, you begin to notice subtle changes. More confidence in your tone, more courage in your decisions, and more optimism in your perspective. Those changes are proof that repetition is working beneath the surface, rewiring the mind in ways that may not have been visible in the beginning. What makes repetition so powerful is its cumulative effect. One positive affirmation may not transform your life, but one repeated for 21 days can begin to shift the way you think. And that shift in thinking can transform how you act. Just like water shapes stone not by force but by persistence, Repetition shapes the brain not by intensity, by consistency. Every repeated word is like a drop of water carving a new path. And after 21 days, that path is clearer, stronger, and easier to walk. In essence, the power of repetition lies in its ability to transform effort into habit and habit into identity. At first, you are simply practicing new self-talk. But with each repeated phrase, your brain begins to accept it as truth. Soon, you are no longer just saying, I am confident. You begin to feel confident. You are no longer just repeating, I am capable. You begin to act capable. That is the transformation repetition brings after 21 days of intentional self-talk. It rewires the brain to align with the person you are becoming and turns conscious effort into unconscious belief. Self-compassion is more powerful for growth than self-criticism, and this truth often runs against what many people believe. For years, we've been conditioned to think that being hard on ourselves is the key to success, that constant criticism is a form of discipline, and that if we let up even slightly, we will become lazy or complacent. But the reality is very different. Self-criticism, though it may feel like it pushes us forward in the short term, actually erodes motivation, weakens confidence, and creates a cycle of fear and hesitation. Self-compassion, on the other hand, builds resilience, fuels perseverance, and creates the mental and emotional environment where growth can truly happen. The way you treat yourself in your lowest moments determines how quickly you rise from them. And it is compassion, not criticism, that gives you the strength to keep going. When you criticize yourself harshly, you activate the same mental and emotional systems that respond to external threats. The brain interprets self-criticism as danger, flooding the body with stress hormones like cortisol. This creates tension, anxiety, and even paralysis. Instead of moving forward with clarity, you begin to shrink, afraid of making another mistake. Ironically, the very thing self-criticism is supposed to do, help you improve, ends up doing the opposite. It creates fear of failure, which often leads to avoidance and procrastination. You hesitate to take risks, not because you are incapable, but because you are terrified of your own harsh judgment if you fall short. Over time, this cycle convinces you that you are incapable, not because of reality, but because you've trained yourself to expect punishment from within. Self-compassion works in an entirely different way. When you face setbacks and respond with kindness, you signal to your brain that mistakes are not threats, but opportunities to learn. Instead of flooding your body with stress, you calm the nervous system, creating space for problem solving and creativity. You begin to see failure not as evidence of inadequacy, but as part of the natural process of growth. This mindset encourages persistence because the cost of trying and failing is no longer unbearable. If you know you will treat yourself with understanding, you are far more likely to keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep striving toward your goals. Self-compassion creates a safety net that allows you to climb higher, knowing that even if you fall, you will not destroy yourself with criticism. Think about the difference between a coach who constantly belittles and insults an athlete versus a coach who encourages, corrects gently, and motivates. The athlete, with the supportive coach, not only performs better, but also enjoys the process more. Now imagine that coach lives in your head. That is the difference between self-criticism and self-compassion. The supportive inner voice builds confidence, while the critical one slowly erodes it. Growth is not about fear of punishment. It is about belief in possibility. It's also important to understand that self-compassion does not mean lowering your standards or excusing mediocrity. Many people resist compassion because they equate it with being soft or letting themselves off the hook. In reality, self-compassion allows you to hold high standards while also acknowledging that growth is a journey. You can say, I didn't do well this time, but I can improve and I will keep trying, instead of, I am a failure. Both recognize the need for improvement, but one shuts you down while the other keeps you moving forward. Compassion fuels accountability without shame, which makes it far more sustainable than criticism. The practice of self-compassion also strengthens resilience. Life is full of challenges and no one escapes setbacks. The question is not whether you will stumble, but how you will respond when you do. Self-criticism makes every setback feel like a final defeat, while self-compassion reframes it as part of the process. When you respond to failure with patience, you bounce back faster. You learn the lesson, apply the knowledge, and continue forward with renewed determination. Over time, this builds a deep sense of trust in yourself. You know that no matter what happens, you will not abandon yourself to cruelty. That trust becomes the foundation of inner strength. Self-compassion also fosters authenticity. When you are harshly critical, you become afraid of exposing your flaws to others, hiding behind masks and pretending to be perfect. But when you practice compassion, you accept your imperfections as part of being human. This acceptance allows you to be more open, more real, and more connected with others. You begin to understand that everyone struggles, and your challenges do not make you broken, they make you human. This realization not only deepens your connection with yourself, but also with others, creating a supportive environment where growth thrives. Over time, self-compassion reshapes the entire relationship you have with yourself. Instead of being an enemy to fear or a critic to silence, you become your own ally. You begin to see growth not as a battle against your flaws, but as a journey of nurturing your potential. Each step forward feels lighter because you are not dragging the weight of self-judgment behind you. And when challenges come, as they inevitably will, you face them with courage, knowing that whether you win or lose, you will stand by yourself with kindness. In the end, growth is not fueled by self-punishment, but by self-support. The harsh voice of criticism may push you temporarily, but it weakens you over time. The gentle but firm voice of compassion, however, sustains you for the long journey ahead. When you understand that self-compassion is not a weakness but a strength, you unlock the true power to grow, not in fear of your flaws, but in trust of your potential. Transformation begins the moment you choose to rewrite your inner dialogue, and this choice is far more powerful than most people realize. Many wait for external circumstances to change before they believe transformation is possible. They think if they had more money, more opportunities, or more support, then they would finally change their lives. But real transformation never begins outside. It begins in the quiet space of the mind. The words you speak to yourself each day are like commands to your brain, and when you decide to change those words, you immediately begin changing the direction of your life. The moment you stop repeating the old story and start creating a new one, the process of transformation is already underway. For many, the inner dialogue has been shaped over years by experiences, failures, and the voices of others. A person who is told repeatedly that they are not smart enough or not capable enough eventually adopts that voice as their own. Without realizing it, they carry those words into adulthood, replaying the script whenever challenges arise. The transformation begins not when the external world gives them permission to change, but when they themselves choose to reject the old script and write a new one. By saying, "I am not limited by what I used to believe," they open the door to new possibilities. The choice to rewrite inner dialogue is the first act of liberation, the point at which a person stops living by inherited beliefs and starts shaping their own. The power of this choice lies in its immediacy. You do not need to wait for 3 months or a New Year's resolution to begin. The moment you decide to change how you speak to yourself, you are already transforming. If your inner dialogue has been filled with phrases like, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," or "I always fail," then each of those sentences has been programming your actions to align with limitation. But the instant you replace them with affirmations like, "I can learn," "I am capable of growth," or "I can overcome," you send your brain in a new direction. Even if your circumstances remain the same, the way you engage with them begins to shift. Challenges no longer feel like confirmation of inadequacy, but like opportunities to prove your new belief true. That shift in perspective is where transformation takes root. It is important to understand that rewriting your inner dialogue does not erase difficulty from life. Obstacles will still appear, setbacks will still happen, and fear will still try to whisper. The difference is in how you respond. With the old dialogue, obstacles confirm your doubts, but with the new dialogue, they confirm your strength. When you say to yourself, "I am capable of handling challenges," you approach setbacks with resilience instead of despair. That shift changes the way you act, and those new actions produce new results. Transformation is not about creating a perfect life, but about creating a stronger, more empowered self who can face life with courage. What makes the act of rewriting so powerful is that it gives you control. Many people go through life feeling powerless, as if they are at the mercy of external forces. But when you realize you can choose the words you repeat to yourself, you realize you have the ability to shape your mindset, your emotions, and ultimately your outcomes. You may not control the world around you, but you control the dialogue within you. And since your behaviors flow from your beliefs, changing that inner script changes the trajectory of your life. This is why transformation begins the moment you make the choice. Not after weeks or months of practice, but at the very instant you declare, "I will no longer speak to myself in the same way." This choice is also an act of courage. It is easy to hold on to familiar, negative narratives because they are comfortable in their certainty, even if they are painful. Telling yourself, "I can't," protects you from the risk of trying and failing. But choosing to rewrite the dialogue means stepping into the unknown. It means daring to believe in yourself when the evidence of the past may not support it yet. That leap of faith is the spark of transformation because every new beginning requires courage. By speaking new words, you are not just repeating affirmations, you are declaring who you intend to become, and that declaration is the first step toward making it real. The beauty of rewriting your dialogue is that it compounds with time. At first, it feels like a conscious effort, almost like forcing yourself to think differently. But as you keep choosing new words day after day, they begin to settle in, shaping new mental habits. Those habits then shape your decisions, and those decisions create results. Over weeks and months, you look back and realize the person you are is no longer the same as the person who began. And all of it started with a simple choice to change the words you spoke to yourself. Transformation is not about waiting for the perfect conditions. It is about creating them within yourself. The moment you change your inner dialogue, you plant a seed. With repetition and consistency, that seed grows into new beliefs, new behaviors, and eventually a new life. The first step is not the external achievement, it is the internal decision to change the narrative. And once that decision is made, transformation is already in motion. Transformation does not come from a single moment of inspiration, nor does it happen by accident. It comes from the consistent choice to shape the dialogue you hold within yourself. For 21 days, when you speak words of encouragement instead of doubt, when you choose compassion instead of criticism, and when you affirm your strengths instead of replaying your weaknesses, you are training your mind to serve you rather than sabotage you. That is the real challenge, not to fight the world outside, but to master the world inside. And the reward of this challenge is not just a habit, it is a new way of being. By changing your language, you change your beliefs. By changing your beliefs, you change your behaviors. And by changing your behaviors, you change your life. The journey begins with words, but it ends with transformation. So if you are ready to see a new version of yourself, if you are ready to unlock the strength and potential that have always been within you, then take this challenge seriously. For 21 days, talk to yourself like the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. And when the 3 weeks are over, you will realize that you are no longer trying to transform, you already have.